here to help you with that. And if you like that or that resonates with you, like and subscribe to this channel because that's what we're all about. I apologize. I feel underdressed. You did say you were going to wear a suit, but
I have to wear a suit.
I don't have any logoed suits yet.
You gotta get one?
Yeah, I might have to get one.
You gotta do the interior where you open it up.
And it's a logo. And that's good. So you just wear suits everywhere? It sounds like that's your thing.
No, I have to.
Because you're a lawyer?
Yeah, you can't show up in jeans and sandals.
People don't take you seriously, huh?
I mean, that's why I like Zoom.
Oh.
From here up, suit. It's a new mullet. It's a 2020 mullet.
Interesting.
You're right. Jeans on, sandals, socks, whatever it is.
I love it. I love it. So the name of the podcast is HOA Crusades. We're in season 2, episode 2.
All right.
And we're here with Chaz Ryan of Pilicy and Ryan. And Chaz is an attorney we use the most frequently. Not the only one, but as I've always tell people, best docs in the business, at least that I've seen so far. So we always appreciate that. And you've done a lot of good work for our clients. So I'm really grateful to have you on and get to pick your brain and, have you share some words of wisdom with our listeners.
Happy to be here. Cool. Happy to work with you. It's been great.
Cool. Thanks. So tell us a little bit about, I guess I want to start with just kind of introductions, like how you got into this. Because I know, your dream since you were a kid was to be an HOA lawyer, right?
Isn't that what every kid wants?
Yeah. I guess some certain kinds of kids, right? No. So, and then, how you got here and kind of, a little bit about your background in the space. And then I guess we can get into, areas that you think are really important for people to be aware of with respect to their HOA in the coming years.
Okay. Right? So a little bit of background about myself, how I got into it. I met a girl in law school.
Okay.
She was a year behind me, and the economy was not doing great. And I got an opportunity to go to Boston University to do an LLM, basically a master's in law. And I said, what am I doing? I need to work. I've been in school for 7 years. It's time to get out there and work. And this girl I met, her father was an attorney in Watertown, Connecticut. And I was dating her. We weren't engaged. We were married. We were dating. Things were going well. And every time I'd see her father, he'd offer me a job. And I said, I'm just dating your daughter. Maybe not the right fit. And then I said, you know what? He asked me enough times. I said, maybe I will do this. So I met with him. I went in on a Saturday, put a suit and tie on, sat down, and we had about a 3-hour interview. And one of the questions I asked was, what happens if your daughter breaks up with me? Where's my job go? And he said, as long as everything's respectful, you'll still have a job. And I said, okay. So I thought about it, and I took the job. And he was a condo lawyer. He did municipal law, condominium law. It was a smaller practice back then. Probably had 80 accounts or so, worked with just a handful of managers. But I went there. It was right when Kiowa had been amended, so it was 2010. Mm-hmm. The new laws. I was working actually my third year law school. I was working there during some of the breaks when I had far fewer exams that year and things like that. So I would go on some long weekends and work there, and I was working on drafting condo docs, and that's all I was doing, one after another, just rewriting condo docs because the law had just changed. And then when I started, I took the bar exam at the end of July. I started in August. I tried to start in September. He wouldn't let me, so I started in August. And again, it was just condo docs, and so I was reading. And it's funny, I wasn't a lawyer yet. I had taken the bar, waiting for results, and people would call up, and I'd say, "Oh, I don't know the answer because I think I know, but I'm not a lawyer. I can't tell you." I didn't have a clue what the answer was, so I end up asked Franklin, come back, give an answer, great, and then all of a sudden I became a lawyer overnight. The results came in. I passed. I got sworn in at our Supreme Court here in Connecticut, and then I no longer had that excuse. Yet I knew nothing. Couldn't say I'm not a lawyer anymore.
Right.
So anyway, that's how I really landed at this job. I always joke around. I just date the boss's kids, and you can have a job. And that was, people make fun of me. I said, look, at the time, my brother-in-law's not married. He's single. Date him. You'll have a job. And and here we are. So it really evolved. That was a big secret of mine for a while. I didn't want people knowing that Franklin was my father-in-law. He gave you the job, but he's a worker bee. I'm a worker bee. It was really good. He was very supportive of me going out and getting involved in CAI here in Connecticut. First thing I ever did was a trade show. I got asked to be on a committee, just a one-time panel to speak. I did that. That went well. Then they offered me the committee. I got on that committee. I've been on the program and education committee ever since, probably 12 years now. Then there was an opening on another committee. I joined that, and another committee, then the board of directors of CAI. Now I'm the president of CAI. It just really expands. I've spoken at the national convention it was down in Florida at the time. It really expanded, but that's how I got here. I literally met a girl in law school. Her father did this. The economy was terrible, but I gotta be honest. I actually love it.
Really?
I really do. You've been doing this.
Yeah.
It's so diverse. I thought representing condos was drafting documents. It's just not. I always joke that Jack Welch never left. GE went home, went to his mailbox, and had 50 shareholders, banging down his door, talking to him at the mail. Why didn't you do this? Why that? And we joke around, but it's true. They're corporations. And our shareholders are our homeowners, but they live next door. Mm-hmm. They live next door, most of them, and it's an interesting setup. But I love it. It's so diverse.
Interesting. And so, HOAs get a bad rap a lot of times, and the HOA attorneys as well, right? Just because I don't know if you've been on social media, but it's just like everybody hates the HOAs, right? So maybe you can talk a little bit about. What are some really positive outcomes that you've been able to get for people? Because I think most of the time when people the average person thinks of an HOA, and I see it in the comment section all the time. It's like, why would you buy an HOA? They're evil, corrupt people. They're just trying to take your money, all this stuff. And when you and I work in this space, our experience is very different. And we're really, property management and supporting property managers as attorneys or supporting HOAs, it's really about service to the community and service to the membership in that community. And I think a lot of times that goes overlooked. So maybe you can just share some experiences that have been where you've gotten outcomes that were really positive and beneficial and that you were really able to help, and you feel really good about it when you go to bed at night.
So, as I said, it's very diverse, right? Very diverse. So lots of things come up, and they're not. I am an attorney. A lot of times they call me when something goes wrong.
Yeah.
Right? And our job is to represent the associations. We don't represent managers, but we work with them. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you and I work together on files and accounts, things like that. But it's really, you never know what's going to come up. Sometimes we're dealing with things such as disabilities, and someone has a disability-related need in the community. And I've educated my clients to, someone needs a dog, they need a wheelchair ramp, they need something. Look at it as if it's a wheelchair, not a dog. Mm. And would you deny someone a wheelchair, right? How you look at it as, how can we help this person? And a lot of times people get it, they work towards it, we figure out reasonable results, we move on. We've seen the biggest one I dealt with where we really helped out a community was a major fire.
Okay.
Pretty much, if at the time it was, and I'm sure it is today, the largest condo fire in Connecticut.
Okay.
I keep hearing different numbers. It was about $17 million fire.
Was that in Glastonbury?
No, it was in Norwalk.
Okay.
And it was 2 weeks before Christmas. Really? So I didn't represent the association at the time of the fire, but when it happened, the management company called me and said, we need to bring you in on this. And I said, wow, okay. It's humbling when they say that. And I got in my car, I drove down, and I went up to the 4th floor. It's one building, 54 units. And I remember it to this day. I walked up, and there was no ceiling in the middle of the building. Think of one long building, 4 floors, garage underneath. And I looked, and there's nothing there. And snow had fallen over the couple days since the fire. And there's a Christmas table dinner setting, and it's filled with water from the hoses from the fire trucks. And it's all frozen. The salad bowl's frozen, the wine glasses are frozen. And you take a minute, it's just really sad. You're looking around. There was no loss of human life. There were some animals that perished, but no human life. And the fire started because of a tenant or an owner that was a real problem owner. There was a lot of drug activity. There was a lot of complaints. The board was limited in what they could do. Again, I didn't represent them at the time. And it was his unit, put a cigarette out on the deck. It wasn't put out properly, and everyone lost their home. Now, this fire was unique because everybody lost their home. I've never been to a fire where 54 to 54 units are destroyed. Now, they didn't all burn, but they all had the water damage. Essentially, the fourth floor filled up with water. The water went down to the end to where the mechanicals are, all the wires, and it dropped down to the third floor, second floor, first floor. We ended up gutting this all the way down to the frame. This was a big loss, but you had everybody displaced. And so we were meeting at the town hall in Norwalk, where the mayor was excellent, the fire marshal was great. I mean, this community really came together. But the first night, it was a mob mentality. I mean, it was a mob mentality. The first meeting was 1 week after the fire. Absolute mob mentality. They hated us. They hated management, the insurance company, myself. They wanted to know what we were doing with the owner. But I'll tell you, at the end, 18 months later, they were hugging us. We knew their names. They loved us. And when I say us, I mean everyone collectively. The management company did a great job of communicating with them. They used a software system, Polera, that was allowing them to communicate. And I was reviewing the communications, and they were going out. There's a lot of background information, a lot of team. But we really brought that together, and that was really difficult. Not everyone had insurance. The person who caused the fire, we recovered an urn with his father's ashes, and we were trying to get that back to him. People didn't have insurance. Some of the people just didn't have insurance. Their personal property was gone. Some of the tenants that we were dealing with in the early aftermath, the Red Cross got involved. It was a lot, but as I said, at the end, they were hugging us. They knew us. They were appreciative, and I think a lot of the communication that went into it really helped. And trust me, there were hiccups. There were absolutely hiccups. Code changes. We had to do code upgrades. We had some uninsured upgrades from some faulty construction. A lot went on, but you were really able to help those people. We got them through a very, very tough time in their life. Some people had, the woman that had the no roof and the Christmas table and whatnot, she had actually just been foreclosed on, but she hadn't been removed from the property. And so she had no insurance. All her personal property was just gone. And she didn't speak English all that well, so we had someone at the management company that spoke the same language. We brought her in to help, and sometimes you go a little bit above and beyond. You have to be compassionate in the situation. It was a lot, and I have to say, at the end, being with those people, some of the people that were most difficult on us were the most grateful at the end, and they're up and running, and they're doing great. But that community really came together. That's something I never thought I'd be involved in. That's a great example of it. And then there's tons of other situations that come up where people need help, but it's not, for me, a lot of times they're one-offs. You just need to show a little compassion and get through it. I remember, I'll stop after this last one, it's small, but I was foreclosing on a woman in Hartford. It was young in my career. And she wanted to pay something ridiculous. I said, no, something ridiculous. It was going to be like an 80-month payoff plan or something. Right. The board wasn't approving it. It wasn't happening. And so we went to judgment. And she called up and she basically said, look, I'm going to lose my home. But more importantly, I'm going to lose my kids. I'm in a custody battle. I said, okay. Called my client, got my client to agree. But I went to court and I filed a motion to open the judgment. And the court said, okay, when are you going to, I'm going to order I'm going to open the judgment. I'm going to order that the case be withdrawn within 30 days. 30 days, 45 days, whatever it was. Judge, hold on a second. We need to talk. But he asked me why I asked for a sidebar, and he granted it, and I was able to explain, Judge, this woman's going to lose her kids, and we're not in the business of that because she's going through some tough times. And it was nice to be able to throw a little humanity into it, and ultimately the association got paid. It took them a little bit longer, and as far as I know, she got to keep her kids. And that's not what we're here for. We're not here to try to separate a family.
Right.
So a little random one, but things like that happen. And if you get a chance to, do what you do, represent your client, make sure that their best interests are taken in the forefront, but helping people along the way, not an issue.
That's really profound, and I appreciate you sharing those stories, because those are things that go on mostly behind the scenes that a lot of people don't realize, right? And I feel like most of the time people just think that the management company or the attorneys, once they get involved, is just like the sheriff, right? Just coming to dole out fines and take your place and this, that, and the third. And there's definitely a aspect of, compassion and trying to meet people where they are. There's also the issue of like accountability and us living in a society that just people have a really tough time with, just following the rules and being accountable to their neighbors for the things that they agreed to. It's like, okay, we all chose to live here. We all chose to do this and that. And I mean, a lot of the things, so I think of the story you said about the fire, right? A lot of people get mad, why can't I smoke on my balcony? Or why are you trying to make this an issue or that an issue? It's like, well, because when you play out the tape, it's not to say that this will happen, but this could happen. And, you've seen the destruction of someone who was notoriously problematic, causing a fire where everybody loses their stuff and is displaced for 18 months, right? And a lot of times when someone's on the receiving end of this fine or this hearing or this violation, it's like the HOA is just out to get me. The lawyer's just, getting paid, right? And they're really not playing the tape through. And, do you try to have conversations around that? I mean, is it worth it, or how do you navigate those situations?
Well, a couple of things. One, the overwhelming majority follow the rules. Let's be honest, they do. They follow the rules. Otherwise, we would just completely have a different culture at this community. It'd be a different board. They wouldn't care. I always joke around. I can't paint my house purple, but neither can my neighbor. And that's the thing. And a lot of people will just follow the rules just because those are the rules. They'll abide by the rules, and let's move on. You do find the people that don't, and it's frustrating. One area where it's a problem is when they're buying it, they don't ask the questions. They just buy in. Mm-hmm. They show up with 7 dogs, and it's a no-dog community. Well, the information was there. You just chose not to read it. That can be problematic. Or they have big work vehicles that don't fit within garages. They don't fit. They stick out of driveways. They don't fit entirely within one line parking space. The legitimate issues that affect other people. A lot of times, if you can address it in the resale certificate, that's a great opportunity. In a resale certificate in Connecticut, we have to put a number of disclosures out there. But nothing says we can't add a little bit more, right? Or something we do as well if we know we have problems. I tell the board, take a piece of paper, one sheet, not white. Make it a different color, blue, pink, I don't care. Think of your top 10 items. Make it the largest font so only those 10 fit on this. And bullet point the rules, the regulations that you want to address. Because every community is different, right? Some have problems. They might all have very similar rules, but not every community has the same problems.
Right.
So we'll say, parking is an issue. Pets are an issue. Put them on there and send that out every year with your annual package. It's so simple. Instead of asking someone to read through a 10, 20, 30-page rules document or the declaration and the bylaws, identify the ones that are big topics, and that helps a lot, especially if you don't put it on a white piece of paper buried amongst 80 different white pieces of paper. Here's the budget, here's our newsletter, here's our president's report, treasurer's report, financials, and oh, by the way, this is a very important document. The other thing that works, believe it or not, pick up the phone. It's crazy. People, it gets ignored. And I don't think it's intentional, but pick up the phone and say, "Hi, Mr. Jones. Are you aware that you're not allowed to go up on your roof and replace your chimney?" "No?" "Okay. Well, you're not. Let's talk about a resolution and go through this." Right? And I use extreme examples intentionally. But picking up the phone can go a long way. And what I've done too is, depending on the violation of the person, I may say to the board, what if we draft a letter, or what if you draft a letter, management does it? We'll review it, but you send it out yourselves. Keep the lawyers out of it. There's a little bit of that as well. Excuse me. There's a little bit about that as well, because once you get the letter from the lawyer, the hairs go up, people get defensive, and sometimes it can be resolved that way. But if you can resolve it prior to having to take real enforcement action, that's a win. That's a win all day long. We say once you end up in court, you've lost. Doesn't matter what the outcome is, you've lost. It's time out of your life. It's association resources, expenses. You don't know what the outcome's going to be. Courts can rule however they want. So if there's a way to get ahead of things without going to court and picking up the phone, knocking on the door, having a side conversation, I mean, you know the people.
Right.
You get to know the personalities. That's great. That helps. And the longer a management company's been with the association, the more rapport you have with those people, the more help you can get.
Mm. No, that's really honestly that I think a one sheet of blue piece of paper, right? Like that is the first time I heard it, and it makes so much sense because you're right. There are certain associates. I just ran into one where it's a resale. Like there's parking rules, and she has 3 vehicles, and it's like, she's like, I wish there was more disclosure. I was like, it was in the resale package we sent, but that's an opportunity to take accountability on my part. Be like, okay, maybe there's this other thing I could have done that would have alleviated this pain point, right? Rather than her move in her first experience, be like, okay, your dry vent's clogged and you have 3 vehicles.
And you're right. That's their first experience.
Right.
It's not welcome to the community. How's everything? Oh, I've been here for 10 years and now I never had a violation. Now I have one. It's, hi, welcome. Get your car out of here.
Exactly.
That's your, like, wait, what?
Yeah.
You started off by saying there could be a bad rap. That's where it comes from. You have to step in other people's shoes and see what's going on.
Yeah.
But again, that one sheet, if that's the issue, if parking's an issue, and that's a big topic, right?
Yeah.
Parking's a big issue, and it's clear why, but that's one that most associations can address, right? Most of the associations were built in the 80s.
70s.
This one in particular,
Yeah.
even worse. So in the 70s, think about the family dynamic, right? How many people lived in the house? How many generations lived in the house? How many cars did the average family have?
Right.
So the zoning laws and whatnot and the approvals, they said, okay, you have to have 1 parking spot per vehicle, right? Oh, or per unit. Great. All right, we'll set up. Maybe it was 2, whatever. The garage can be 1 outdoor, whatever it was. That's fine until 2024 comes and you've got 3 generations living at home. Kids stay home longer. They come back after school. Maybe mom or dad move back because they're aging. Who knows? But all of a sudden, how many cars do we have? Every kid's got a car. Both spouses have a car. Where do they go? Right? And some communities have lots of space. Some don't. Many don't. And that parking can be a tough issue for everybody.
Mm. Yeah. No, and we're seeing it all the time. That, dues, reserve studies. Reserves
are a big one.
Special assessments, loans. And I actually made a video about this last week, and it was direct. I'm a very black and white person. Well, that's not true. I can see the gray area, but there's math is math. It was kind of the theme of the video. Like there's a special assessment. The board took over for a board that didn't really put reserves away for a long time. Didn't up their dues, like $175 a month for the last 15 years.
That terrifies me.
Yeah.
Right? Even as a manager, doesn't that terrify you?
Yeah.
And they smile. Yeah, no, it's been the same for 10 years. You're like, oh my God.
Right.
Inflation hasn't been the same for 10 years.
Yeah. And surprisingly, they still have like 40 grand or 35 grand in reserves. I was like, okay, well, that's good. But they need a new roof.
How many units?
14. Okay. Small. So and I don't usually do ones this small, but the board's like, hey, we really need help. Like we took over for this other board and they hadn't filed taxes in 10 years. It's just like, okay, we'll help. Let's do our best, right? So we're doing the numbers. We're like, okay, we'll pull half of this roof from reserves, but we can't wipe out the reserve account. That's what you have. Like, the roof is going to cost a little more than your entire reserves, right? So we can't do that. But we'll pull half from reserves and we'll pull the other half from a special assessment. It's like a one-time $1,800. And I get an email. It's like, and this person's already behind. They're on a payment plan, and they've been paying it. Like that's the tough part about it. Is like I understand you owe the association $2,000 and you're paying a little bit more than your monthly dues every month, and it's not in collections because she's been good, and it was in place before I got there. And okay, no problem. but then there's an $1,800 special assessment one time, or we can split it up into 3 months, $650 over 3 months, right? Like, it's just, she's like, there's no way I can afford this. I can't afford it. I'm like, I understand. You guys are already having roof failures. You can't afford not to. I don't know how to solve your issue, and I'm sorry that you're in this position, but math is math. Like, it can only be split up 14 ways. What other solution is there? Okay, do we get a loan, but then you're paying the interest and all this stuff? And it's like, so we run into these issues a lot, and there's tough conversations required of me frequently. And I think it gets, and I'm sure of you as well. I mean, I'm not alone in this. And it's just difficult to manage, like, okay, who am I going to be for this association or in this moment? Because you want to be compassionate, but sometimes you also just need to be factual, right? So how do you navigate? How do you balance that? Because I love that you're coming off, like, you're showing that there is a humanity and there is a compassion to this line of work. There's also another side of it that's just like, we can feel for each other as much as possible, but the rule is what the rule is, or the dues are what the dues are. Like, the situation is what it is.
So think about the situation that's actually occurring, right? Which is a roof is failing. And that means water is coming in.
Yeah.
Water is coming in. That's really the roof failures that we deal with in this industry. So somebody is living with water entering their unit, whether it's dripping down or whether it's just basically saturating an attic area, creating mold, adding expenses that are going to have to be cleaned up later. Something's happening, and they're common expenses that are happening. So we have the association's exposure, liability, want to just fix it, and then we have someone who's physically living in this, right? So what's fair to them, right? Can they not use a bedroom? Can they move their kids out of a bedroom or something because that room can't be used with this leak until it's fixed? We want to fix it. So you have that component of, this is urgent. We need to deal with this. And the problem is they haven't raised their charges for so long. They haven't put in the reserves, and the reserves are low, especially with where construction costs are these days, right? It's just, you're not there. So you're right. You have to take that and weigh that against what's going on with this person. This is going to sound terrible, and then I'll be nicer after that. This is going to sound terrible, but there's a population out there that can no longer afford to live in a community. And it sounds terrible, but it is a reality. Some people just financially cannot continue to live in the community they're in. And so you try to decide and work with them, well, is this something where the association is going to ultimately foreclose, or is this something where you're going to be able to sell it? Or what's going to happen? Can you get help? Whatever the case may be. I hate to say the dirty word, but maybe you can rent it and go from there.
Yeah.
But what do you need? Talk to us. Don't go silent. Talk to us, and let's see what we can do. But some people literally are on, and many people are on a budget that doesn't have room for these extras. She's on a payment plan. She's behind. You work with her. I think that's great. But this might be the extra that puts her over, and that's unfortunate. Some of the things we do right now is a bad time of year for it, but some of the things we do is we deal with tax returns. Is she going to get a tax return soon? Can we hold off on sending the foreclosure until the tax return comes in? If so, great. Stay current on your common charges. Pay us off with your tax return. Is it something where you could take a little bit more from the reserves and spread out her payments and make them a little bit smaller on the $1,800 or so that's owed? You try to work with them, but ultimately, if at the end of the day they're not going to be able to pay it, the writing's on the wall, that's a tough discussion that has to be had. Or it's something where, they fall behind, they do get turned over to the attorney, and you instruct the attorney, try to work with them. Because when it comes over to me, I've got timelines. I have things I have to reach, right? I have to send a letter, give so much notice, then if that doesn't work, I have to have a title search, I have to send notice to the banks. Sometimes their banks will pay it. That doesn't work, start the foreclosure action. But those are all timelines and those clocks don't run until we do something. So if you wait and wait and wait and wait and wait, that timeline doesn't begin to run until all those waiting periods are over. So we've had people get turned over where it's saying, look, we're sending them over to you. We need you to start collections, but if they need an extended payment plan, work with them. We want to get the clock running, but we don't want to run up a bunch of legal fees and costs. So try to work with them. And we did a lot of that during COVID. We had 18, 24-month payment plans, really trying to work with people to get the debts down, but understanding that they had been laid off, understanding that things were different. They didn't have the hours they once had. Who knows?
Yeah. No, that's a really good point to it. So obviously, you brought up COVID. COVID is a symptom or a unique circumstance to our time frame, right? HOAs have been around a while. The dynamic within HOAs has changed a lot, right, over the last 50 years since some of these associations were built, and it's changing ever more. So, what are some things that you envision becoming issues in the future, and that are like, hey, these are some big things that we as attorneys see a lot, and these are ways that you really need to utilize us so we can add value and advise you on these things or solve these issues before they become catastrophic.
The big issue we're dealing with, we see it, it's coming, we're dealing with it, is structural. It's going to be your capital improvements.
Okay.
I had a discussion with another lawyer the other day, not to terrify everyone, but these units are built with wood. Wood's going to fail someday. Like, I have no idea when.
Right.
But someday. Something to think about. What's going to happen in 20 years? What's going to happen in 30 years? Some of these buildings. Is the structural component of it going to fail to a point where there's no more value? That's scary. But that's something that another lawyer and I were talking about just generally. Now, I'm not seeing that yet. We see sinking foundations and things like that we all know about, but we're not seeing the wood framing actually crumble. I don't want to scare anybody that way, but it's something to think about. Capital improvements are the issue. You touched upon reserves, having $35,000 in reserves. At 14 units or so, how much is that a unit, right? 2,200, 2,300, whatever the number is. It's really not that much.
No.
Yeah, it's really not. And I have 100-unit associations that will say, we have $100,000 in the bank. And it's like, well, okay, well, that's $1,000 a unit. So you got a special assessment. You have more than $1,000 a unit, you're underfunded. And I think we've all seen the reserve studies come in. Client pays for it, they see it, they get sticker shock, they put it away. We'll pull that out later. We really need to think about those things. Every day that you live in your unit, you're using some of the road, you're using some of the useful life of the siding, the decks, the windows, the roofs, whatever the association takes care of. The idea is you should be paying for some of that as you go, so that later on the money's there, or the next person can use that money, and then they start paying in. That's the idea, right?
Right.
And there are communities that are set up that way. They're properly funded, but many of them aren't. Vast majority are not properly funded. That's our big issue right now. I'm doing more loans than I've ever done in my life. I said it last year. I've done more loans than I ever did. We're ahead of it this year. I'm getting commitment letters for loans, multiple ones per week, and then they're closing. And they're taking this money and they're doing their roofs, their siding, their walkways, their roadways, pools over. Go down the list, all the capital improvements. Sometimes they make me nervous. A 15-year special assessment to repay a loan, a 15-year loan for a roof, and I'm sitting back saying, when do you need a road? When do you need windows? When do you need decks? When do you need... You've identified one project, and that's great, but you put it out for 15 years.
How many other things are going to happen in 15 years?
Right. And so are you going to be able to refinance that? What's going to get built in? And I get it. It's people, it's money. You're trying to do the right thing, but that's a lot. I'm closing a loan now that's a small loan, and it's only a 5-year loan. Well, it's good, it's 5, but maybe they should have taken a larger loan, gone 7 years, and had 3 of those major components done. And it all depends. Everyone's different. Depends what they need to do. But those things are out there. We're seeing nationally big push from the mortgage giants. They are asking questions on our reserves. Mm-hmm. CAI National they do support legislation locally that involves mandatory reserve studies and things like that. They've given us all the freeway we want, essentially, to determine what it should be, but they do support it. So we have been working with the Connecticut legislature to try to have something put in. It hasn't passed yet. Last year it came up. It didn't go through. This year with a short session, didn't go through. Needed some tweaks. We work with our lobbyists to try to get these things moved. We have a pretty good relationship in Hartford, and we get in there and say, before you mandate every association of a reserve study, let's understand what it is. And does a 2-unit community really need it? Does a 4-unit? You know, if they do, should they be exempt to, you know, they can do it every 10 years? Who knows? And so is it going to be mandatory reserve studies or mandatory reserve contributions? Because legally, there's no mandatory reserve contribution in Connecticut. Everyone says, oh, you have to put 10% away. You have to put 10% away in your budget. Those are underwriting guidelines from the banks, but they can also be higher depending on the situation. We don't have it here in Connecticut as a requirement. Now, obviously, we need the units to be able to be financed, right? We need mortgages.
Because then you're exposing yourself on D&O.
You are, yeah. I mean, what's the value of a home
Right.
if it can get a mortgage versus if it's not eligible for a mortgage? You can only have a cash buyer.
Right.
So we need to enhance and protect those property values. But that's the big issue. Surfside in Florida was tragic. A lot of people died. It was terrible. It gave us some insight as to what can happen. And we saw immediately the questionnaires, the condo questionnaires. I don't know if you remember them when people were refinancing or selling, and those condo questionnaires would come in, and they were asking questions about it. Has there been an engineer study? Has there been?
I fill them out all the time.
Yeah, and you say, well,
no, unknown.
confirm there's no structural defects. I'm not doing that. That's not my problem. Those things. I mean, those calmed down a little bit, but now we're even seeing. I've had a few denials already. They asked for 6 months worth of minutes. Have you seen that?
Yep, I've had to submit that a couple times.
And so what happens now is they're reading them, and if you're doing your minutes and you're putting, whatever you want, the reserve study came in and says we're going to need new roofs in 2 years, and we don't have any money for it. Well, the bank's reading that now. Mm-hmm. Be careful what you put in your minutes. I have a very nice high-end community in Middlebury that's having real trouble with banks. Banks are denying loans because of some of the information in their minutes. And it's unfortunate because realistically, they're probably fine. Right? But I can't say that. The board can't go out and say it. Management can't go out and say it. We're working, but we're trying to help. But we see that a lot.
Interesting.
So how's that for a long-winded lawyer answer to what trends do you see coming?
No, I mean, and we've made videos about it and we talk about it, and it's like I'm a big fan of the push for reserve studies. I think that because we have a background in construction, we kind of understand how much stuff costs. One of the things that I came to the realization of, and I made a video about this, was I think the statistic is, well, I think the statistic I put in the video is wrong, but let's say half of Americans, if not more, don't have $1,000 set aside if an emergency came up. $1,000 emergency would require them to take on debt, right? So now the average American is also who are buying properties in condo associations and HOAs. And the average American is the one who's getting voted onto the board of directors of those HOAs. And presumably they're going to apply the same financial practices that they apply in their own life to the association, which is, when the time comes, if we need to, we'll take out a loan, or we'll do this, or we'll do that, or like, why do we have to put so much into reserves? I really just want to pay as little as possible for where I live. And, it makes me unpopular sometimes when I'm like, that's not a sustainable model, right? Like, we have to do better, because I started talking about it in terms of closed real estate. Like, people just say, oh, these are our dues every month. I'm like, okay, you're responsible for $22 million of real estate in this community.
I say that all the time.
Right?
I do. I say it all the time. Plus and you're operating it with a budget of
$300,000.
Right.
Right? And you're responsible for a corporation worth $22 million, and inside that corporation is the biggest investment of your personal life, which is the place most likely the place you live, right? And you're not managing it. You're not managing it appropriately. Like, I don't know how else to say it, right? Like, we have to plan for the future. And the things that I hear so much as people are getting older is like, well, I might be dead in 10 years. Why am I paying for this thing that may not benefit me? And that's a really tough, it's a cultural thing. It's something that is really it's tough to kind of wrap my head around. And I have to work to meet people where they are. I get that. It's like, okay, in 10 years, I'm either going to sell the unit or be dead or be in a nursing home or whatever. And it's like, I'm on a fixed income right now. And I'm like, that's okay. But I also need you to be a good person and not say that's a problem for the next guy, right? Like, that's a problem for everybody right now. And once the reserve study legislation gets passed, you're going to see this. Everybody's like, well, if we look at dues relative to everybody else in town, I'm like, well, you don't know what they're putting away for reserves.
They're all snowflakes. I hate that comparison.
What do you mean? Yeah.
They're all snowflakes. I mean, what do their insurance loss runs look like?
Yeah.
You know, how do you compare the two?
Agreed.
What's included in their common charges? What not? You know, do they pay for windows or do they not pay for windows? What about decks? There's so many things that go into that.
100%.
I hate that comparison.
I know. And I hear it all the time. And I'm like, well, we have no amenities. And if you look at this complex over, it's like, well, we don't know how they're being run. But what I do like about the idea of forcing reserve state legislation, other than solving a problem, is that it kind of levels the playing field a little bit, because the people who've been putting away from reserves, then it's like, okay, all us managers or attorneys who've been saying get a reserve study, budget accordingly, they're going to be less affected when that happens, and their dues are going to remain relatively consistent to what they were planning. And the ones who've just been kicking down the can down the road for 50 years, their dues are going to double and triple. And then it's going to be like, okay, relative to the rest of town, how are your dues now that you've been implementing this reserve study for the last 5 years, and you're not playing catch up on all those funds, right?
It's true. So, a couple things. One, people, obviously, my friends, my family, they know what I do.
Right.
So I always get the question, what's a good community to buy into? Which condo? Where should I look? And my answer is the same every time. I say, go find one you like. Find one. And then when you find it, drive through the community and look at the roofs. Look at the road. Look at the decks. Look at the siding or the wood painting. Look at it. What looks like it's going to need repairs? Okay. Mm-hmm. Is it one item? Everything looks good but the road. Everything looks good but the roof. But take a look. That's step one. If you're still happy at that point and you put your offer in and it gets accepted, get the resale certificate. And let me look at the finances. It's going to disclose what's in reserves. It's going to disclose capital improvements capital improvement projects that are over $1,000 have been approved by the board, right? These things are going to be there, and we can look at that. What do they have in the bank and see where it is. Is this a good fit? Mm-hmm. Or does it just look like it's a good fit? If you need 3 things done and you have no money in the bank, you just need to know you're going to have an assessment. And the other part is, as a board member, when you're putting together your budget, and I joke, I tell boards all the time, if your manager and myself put together your budget, you'll fire us. We'll put the budget together. We're gone. We're fired. You're going to hate it. But I tell them all the time, do you want to receive a $5 a year increase or 0 for 10 years and then a $50 increase? Mm. What's fair? What's manageable? Right? That shock, 10 years out, 5 years out, it all depends, right? That can hurt people. It's better to slowly do it. And there was a manager I was talking to, he actually did the math on it. And if you run the numbers, you actually end up with a lot more money if you slowly increase than if you just jump.
Right. Especially
because you can, even if you put in a CD, you don't need all of it liquid, right? You can have some investments, simple, safe investments, no Bitcoin, none of that stuff, right? No casino investments. We want to keep it prudent. So in any event, but if you had $5 extra a month this year, right, and maybe it's $8 extra next year, and maybe it's 11, and then 16, total, whatever it is, that grows faster. You'll have more money. It's an interesting point of view.
Yeah, 100%. And you're also not burning money on interest, and that's one of the things that drives me. Like, I have an association that they did a lot of really great work 7 years ago, eight years ago, and they're just paying off the loan. And it was a $350,000 loan. And I'm looking at how much, okay, they got a lot of work done. Also, they spent $100,000 in interest over the course of that term, if not more. Right?
Yeah, that may be the only option too.
Right, I agree.
Don't the 15-year loans are the ones that get me. A 7, much better. But remember, if you approve the repayment with a special assessment, as opposed to a budget line item, if owners that don't want to pay interest can opt out, right? They can pay their share off in advance and only pay their share of the principal loan, and be done, not partake in the special assessment, or anytime during the life of the loan, sometimes for a small fee by the bank, or usually free on the anniversary of the loan once a year, they can pay off their share of the principal and then be done with the assessment. So maybe they're not ready now, but in year 2 they are. They can pay it off and save all that interest. If you do it through the budget, they're in the budget. They're in the loan. You can't stop. I mean, the law says everyone has to pay their share of the budget. But those condo loans are unique. They work, so at least some people would be able to save the interest if they wanted to.
Yeah,
which is nice.
Right, and it's not to say that there's never a time for that tool. I just think it's, I mean, and again, this is more has to do with me as a person and how I run my company rather than,
And the advice you give.
Right. And I'm a Dave Ramsey guy, so I don't like that. I don't like interest. I just pay for it, right? And that's not always, that doesn't align with where a lot of people are at. But we special assessed. We had a decreasing special assessment over 5 years, where the work was going to be done at the end of that special assessment, right? So it's like we're able to use every dollar towards the capital improvement rather than pay a premium to borrow money, right? And I think what I like so much about reserve studies is like, hey, we have so much more leverage if we're not paying interest, right? And we don't have to, it's not like something it's not hanging over our head for 5 years or 7 years, we just pay for it. And a lot of communities are like, oh, we'll just take on a loan and special assessment when the time comes. And it's like, well, you can do way more if you just start putting the money away now. And then you have greater, maybe if you have to take a loan, it's less of a loan. It's less of a, and it's really interesting because, he's a Dave Ramsey guy too. We connected on that. And it's just like, a lot of the average person doesn't want to hear that or doesn't live their life that way. So trying to bring them on board or bring them along in that mindset can be difficult, right? But it's not to say that there's never a time where, hey, we need this work done and we don't have the money.
The beauty is if you have the money in reserves, you have options.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the reality. Whether you want a loan, don't want a loan, you have options. Sometimes we're going to take the loans because it's 2021 and we're getting 3% interest on a commercial loan. This is amazing. Don't touch our money.
Right.
Let's borrow it because it's it's as close to free as possible.
Right.
Or it's 2024 and the interest rates are
10%.
closer to 7, and they're up there. I mean, it is what it is. And so I think they're hovering north and south of 7% right now for these condo loans.
Okay.
Big difference.
Yeah.
Every bank's different. Obviously, the market changes. Don't quote me on it. But now you're in a position where you could say, we're not going to borrow from a bank. We're going to borrow from ourselves because with our safe investments, we're not making more than 7% interest in the bank. We're going to go and use our money. And so having those options allow you to run a business. Right. That's what it is, right? You're running the business, as you said, $22 million business, whatever it is. That helps.
Yeah. No, absolutely. What are some other things that you think are really important, like things that you deal with a lot that associations should have on their radar to deal with them proactively?
The big phone calls I'm getting right now, including this morning before coming here, smoking is the big issue. Okay. And it's the legalization of marijuana. It's becoming a real issue because people are smoking inside their units. It's going through the walls into other units, and other people don't want to smell the secondhand smoke. And it comes down to, is it going into their closets and their clothes smell like it? Is it going into their children's bedroom? Is it just something they don't want to smell? That's a big issue right now. And where the law is on regulating what someone can do inside their unit is different than regulating what they do outside. So we have to get creative with some of the rules and documents and things we do. But the marijuana is a big issue, Smoking in general, but the marijuana seems to bring just an added level to it. I had one woman who was a teacher, and she didn't want to go to school smelling like marijuana. Can't blame her. Another person worked in the military, drug tested all the time. He was nervous. Whether he was going to have a test positive or not didn't matter. It was about him being anxious and nervous about it. So we're seeing that come up. That's a big topic right now. The other big topic that we're seeing is animals and dog-free communities. I could probably go on for 3 hours just on animals alone, but that's a big issue. And people are passionate about their pets. People are very passionate about their pets.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a pet owner myself, so it's one of those things where you tell someone, pick up after Fido, pick up after Fido. Fido needs to go. It becomes a problem, right? Please don't have your dog bark all day long while you're at work. Those things come up, but I try to tell people to a certain extent, especially with noise. You live in a community. If someone lives above you, you have to have some tolerance for noises above you, for hearing footsteps.
Yeah.
If you live in a dog-friendly community, you have to have some toleration for dogs. Some. I mean, it doesn't mean the dogs run around free, biting people, not being picked up after, bark all day. I mean, there's some reasonable tolerance for it. If you live in a community with kids, have some tolerance. If not, move to if you're not 55, wait. If you are 55, move to a 55 and older community. Yeah, there's things like there is some part of this that's community living, and you give up some rights,
Freedoms.
and some freedoms to living in a single family home. And personally, I live in the woods in a single family home where I've got, talking about people coming home. I have my mother with me. I've got 2 kids, my wife and I, dogs. They would hate me in a community.
Right.
But that's a big item beyond infrastructure. People living in close quarters, more people coming home. We touched on parking earlier. These are the things we're seeing every single day. There's another element of, I don't know what happened during COVID, and I don't want to get political or anything, but something happened where people either became mean or they stopped hiding it or something. But joking aside, there's a lower level of tolerance out there and a lower level of respect out there.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that. We're seeing that in the close living quarters.
Right.
And again, not getting into any of the details and stuff, but we're now dealing with discrimination issues. There's federal law on it. If there is, basically we have these environments that are hostile. The boards need to step in and try to resolve it if it involves discrimination. So, I hate you, fine. I hate you because you're female, not fine. Right? The boards have a duty. Once they learn of this, they now have a duty to get involved. It's a relatively new law. I believe it went into effect in 2016. It's a federal law. And there's not a ton of case law on it.
Right.
But it says the board has to step in and act to the extent it can. And so
Interesting.
we're dealing with that. As people were home all the time during COVID, it came up a lot. But if any time any sort of discrimination, any protected class is involved, you have to act. And again, we may not be able to do everything, but we have to try. That's a big ticket item right now.
Right. And I would say, again, I can say this without getting political because it's both sides. It's just all around. Everything has become amplified, inflammatory, like just polarized, right? And I think a lot of it boils down to, the content we have access to, whether it's on the news or social media or whatever it is. It's built to get views. And the things that get views are things that also cause emotional reactions. And we all have to try to unplug from that, in my opinion, right?
It's tough. Like I said, we don't want to go political, but there was a very high-profile case where the media station company, they settled for, we're in the hundreds of millions of dollars. They settled a case, hundreds of millions of dollars. I forget the exact number, but $750 million is what comes to mind.
Okay.
Maybe I'm wrong. They didn't write that check and settle because they, had this chance of possibly losing in court. They didn't write that check. I mean, I have no idea what happened. I'm sure the terms are all confidential. I never looked into it, but wow, just over some media that was out there. Think about that. That's a lot of money to write a check for.
Right. Absolutely. And I also think that there's, you say you don't live in an HOA. I choose not to live in an HOA. And the reason why I choose not to live in an HOA is because that's not the type of living that I want to do, right? It doesn't fit my lifestyle. I'm not, I kind of do my own thing, right? And
You want to play the drums at 2 a.m.
sure.
You want to have people over and sit on the deck. You want late at night loud.
Yeah. I live in the woods in a neighborhood where throughout my neighborhood on Sunday afternoon, I hear gunshots all around the neighborhood, right?
We might live in the same neighborhood.
Right. Yeah. So, and I'm okay with that. Right. And I can only imagine what would happen if someone tried to do that in an HOA, right? Like actually, I just went to a CAI conference on that yesterday, but neither here nor there. But the point is that HOA, and then, so that's one type of personality, right? And then there's another type of person or personality, subset of the population for which the rules and structures and rigidity of an HOA gives them a great deal of comfort, right? Like, it makes me feel safe that there's all these, like, everything's laid out, everything's in black and white. This is how we communicate, this is how we interact, and these are the rules. And you just kind of have to be aware of, okay, what kind of person am I? And am I the type of person who's going to be a good fit for community living or not? And I think too many times the decision is made by, well, is it more affordable to live in an HOA or a condo than it is a standalone home? And two, there's a convenience factor. Like, oh, I'm not going to have to pay for exterior stuff. I don't have to worry about the lawn. There's all these convenience pieces, right, that I just don't want to have to deal with, without recognizing that there's also this other thing. It's like, oh, it's my home, I own it. It's like, well, kind of, you own the right to occupy and use this space as long as you follow these rules, right? So, you can resell it, but it's not like you can do whatever you want. And I think that gets lost on a lot of people, and self-awareness to be like, I'm this person or that type of person, and maybe this is a good or bad living situation for me.
You're not wrong. I mean, community living is great in many, many aspects, right? It is. Just by way of example, we always see the pipes that break, and your neighbor sees it before you see it because there's water coming out, and they call up management, the fire department, and things get resolved faster, right? That might have had to wait till you got home from vacation to find out that something happened to your house. There's a lot of eyes out there, right? Especially from a crime standpoint, there's a lot of eyes around, and they're looking outside at all times. So there's part of HOA living that's great, and it's for people. It depends. It doesn't fit my lifestyle right now. That doesn't mean it won't fit my lifestyle in the future, right? But I've got 2 little kids. There's, bicycles outside left all day. I mean, it's the constant father-child fight, right? There's things I've got my grill. I've got, you can go down the list. There's 4 cars at my house. My mother lives with us. Dogs. We have 4 dogs right now. My mother has 1. I've got a new puppy. Imagine me showing up at your community that has a no dog or 2 dog limit. That may not be the best fit, but I recognize that. I do live in the woods. My neighbor went out and bought a rooster. Okay, so now guess what I hear, especially as it's warming up.
Yeah,
that wouldn't happen in the HOA, but. Right. So I have some tolerance for living in the woods. I don't care. We laugh. It is what it is. Yeah. Things do happen. I've got, like anyone, I've got the bears that come through, the coyotes that come through. Right. But at night, there's not a lot of activity. In an HOA, you may have a lot of activity. People are coming home from work at all hours of the night. People are going out. Everyone lives a different lifestyle. Right. A little more activity where it's very quiet at my house at night. Only at night. Trust me, only. Right. So it is different. But you need to know what you're moving into. Yeah, when my mother moved in with us, one of her first complaints was, the supermarket. There's no supermarket in town. I need to go to the next town over. They need a supermarket. And I said, Ma, this town's been here for years and years, and we moved to it. Mm-hmm. They didn't develop around us. There wasn't a supermarket. They took it away. It's been this way. Enjoy what it is and kind of assimilate to what you have. And that's really the mentality you have to go into, assimilate to what's there. Right. Like I said, your neighbor can't paint their house purple. Neither can you. That's okay. Yeah, absolutely. You did you brought something up, and it reminded me of a talk you gave at the conference, I think 2 years ago, the CAICT conference. And it was about,
you referenced a number of principles from a great book that I love. It's Never Split the Difference, right, by Chris Vaughn, right? And there, one of the things that you talked about and he talks about, and I think goes overlooked a lot, is everybody's always quick to just fight and be adversarial from their perspective or their lens. And as an attorney, I'm sure you see it all the time where it's just like, well, before we come in and try to change everything and say that everybody did it wrong, like, try to understand why things are the way they are, why they were done the way they were done before we cast judgment on it, right? And how often is that a conversation that you have of just being like, okay, so these are your perceived complaints or issues. Like, have we investigated to see, why, what was the rationale for these things being done this way?
A lot of it comes down to culture. They've done it this way for years, so they just continue doing it. Their predecessor did it this way, and that's what they've always done. That's the way it's going to be. So sometimes I take the approach of the opposite. Is this what we need to do moving forward? A little different. What's right for your community? When I rewrite documents, the ones you love so much, I may read a set of documents and it'll say that the association maintains the windows, or even the owners maintain the windows. But the culture for 30 years has been different. Should I write the documents and force them to go back to the way it was written, or should I write the documents to meet what their current culture is and try to adopt that? So my approach a lot of times is to sit back and say, why are we doing this? Are we doing it just to do it? Are we putting the square peg in the square hole? That's it. Where it's an assembly line, you do this, and this is all you do. And when the square peg is the wrong size and it doesn't fit in, the whole thing crumbles. It comes to a standstill because nobody understands why we do it this way. I look at it a little bit. I look at it that way, and try to understand that. I certainly do when dealing with an owner, dealing with their complaints, litigation. I do try to sit back and say, okay, what's their side of this? Where is this coming from? And that's really where the comment earlier came from, which was pick up the phone. Just pick it up. You can't always pick up the phone. You're in litigation. I'm not going to tell you to pick up the phone. Right. But as things are starting to escalate, pick up the phone. Tell me what's going on. What's the issue? What's your side of it? Let me go report that back to the board. Or invite them to a board meeting. Come to a board meeting. Let's have a talk. Tell us what's going on and go from there. But we don't have to do things just because we always did it, right? No commercial vehicles. None. Zero. It's in our documents since 1983. No commercial vehicles. Well, what was a commercial vehicle in 1983?
It's probably like a big dump truck.
Diesel, smoking,
Yeah.
didn't fit within the line parking spots. The big dump truck you're talking about, right? What's a commercial vehicle today? I mean, it can be that, but what do they look like?
It could be an F-150 with some ladder racks.
Yeah, it could be. It could also be the Volkswagen Beetle with the Geek Squad at Best Buy.
Yeah.
It could be the Eversource, little Ford Focuses or whatnot that barely have signage on them. It could be anything. It's commercial. What are we trying to prohibit? What was the intent? What was the purpose? The big trucks caused bigger wear and tear, right? They were ugly to look at. They were an eyesore. They didn't fit entirely within one line parking spot. They didn't fit in the garages. Maybe they stuck out past the driveways. It all depends. Every community's set up different, right? What do we have now? I mean, is the quiet Volkswagen Beetle that comes in and just has some lettering on it, is that what we hate? Is that the commercial vehicle that our documents from 1983 wanted to get rid of? Maybe we don't like the lettering. Okay. The Geek Squad's, completely wrapped vehicle, so that may be a bad example, but some of the smaller vehicles that have a signage, if they can park the car inside the garage with the garage door closed and no one's going to see it, who cares, right? If they can get a magnet and put the magnet over the lettering, who cares, right? We see it all the time. So we have to look at what are we doing? Is this just an old archaic rule that we enforce because that's what the letters say? Or do we need to change it, or do we need to determine how we're going to enforce it? At least in Connecticut, with Kiowa, the Common Interest Ownership Act, the way the statute's written, it doesn't require that the board enforce every single rule. It will say that if the board determines that it's not in the best interest of the association to take action, or the rule is old and outdated, or the association's position is not great, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, it's, the one I use is based on the advice of counsel, it's not in the best interest of the association to take action, then the board doesn't have to take action, but you need to be able to articulate why you're going to treat someone different here. And I think you can in those situations.
Interesting. So it's not just that the rule has to be enforced unilaterally or not. There can be some discretion in the enforcement of that.
There can be some. We need to be careful not to selectively enforce.
Right.
Right. Let's go back to our example. 2 people put a ramp in the front yard. Mm-hmm. One's a wheelchair ramp. One's a skateboard ramp. Mm. Both ramps.
Right.
And these are obviously extreme examples intentionally. But which rules do you want to enforce? Someone brings a limo in, parks it in their garage, it sticks out, door can't close, it goes into the driveway, into the street. We have a problem. It's a part of the job that, when I say I really do like the job, these are the things that come up where you have to get a little bit creative, use some common sense, try to de-escalate, walk into situations trying to keep everyone out of court, keep harmony in the community, but at the same time, there's documents that need to be enforced. They need to be enforced.
Right. And so one of the things that you talked about that you do a lot as a big piece of your practice is rewriting condo docs, which have been tremendously helpful in the communities that you've rewritten them for us, because it just gives us updated, clear, some of the old docs from the 70s are vague and they are like, it's tough.
They don't prohibit Airbnbs back in the 70s?
They don't. And like trying to understand who's paying for a water leak when they're like, oh, it's an easement between all the units. It's paid, this way and that way. And it's like, you got to check the general statute to see how, state of Connecticut treats it. It just, anyways. So you clear a lot of those issues up for us. What, just a quick pitch as to why that's important for communities to do. And how often should they do it? And like, what are the types of issues that they solve, and how do they benefit from spending the however many thousands to do it?
Well, so Kiowa is Connecticut should say, we follow the uniform Kiowa, which is great. Not many states do, but we have a really comprehensive statute. And so for me, the more we can implement, the better. So and this is my opinion, some lawyers may disagree, but mm-hmm. the pre-1984 communities that didn't have to follow Kiowa, some of them are still under the old laws. I don't see the clarity in them, but also even with the documents from the 80s and whatnot, they're not as clear on issues. So condos are new. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're new.
Yeah.
Think about land and how far back it goes, right?
Right.
Back to our ancestors in England and whatnot, or our country was founded, and courtesy and dower and Magna Carta. We're going back. Land has been an issue.
Right.
Condos are this wild thing where, what do you mean I don't own all? You can stack a unit on top of a unit and each can own it. I own to the heavens. What do you mean? That's land. I own
right.
to the center of the earth. No, hold on. We're going to have this shared ownership structure. We're going to stack it. It's crazy. But what we've done is we've learned over the last 40, 50, 60 years a lot. And our documents reflect that now. We've learned a lot. So we add those things to the documents. One of the things that I do is I spend a lot of time taking 1 page, 4 paragraphs that describe the boundaries of a unit, and I turn it into 6 pages because I'm a lawyer. I have to. I gotta be wordy.
Right.
But the idea is to really spell it out, right? And just look around this room.
Right.
If I told you that the walls were the boundaries, well, what's a wall? Right. I could get 3 different answers real quick on what's a wall. Is it this side of the wall? Is the paint going to be? Is the paint going to be a part of the unit? Is that the boundary? Is it maybe the sheetrock? Is it the other side of the sheetrock? Is it the sticks inside the wall? What is it? Same thing with a window. Is it the inside of the window, the other side, what with the glass? You can really start to get into these things. Great example, right over your shoulder is a light switch.
Right.
The wall. Let's just agree that the wall is the boundary.
Right.
What portion of that light switch is on the other side of the wall, and what side's on this side of the wall?
Right.
Right. Do you think that when someone changes out their light switch, the association should pay for 30% because 30% of it protrudes into past the sheetrock?
Right.
Here's my bill from Home Depot. You owe me 30%. No. So we clarify a lot of those things, and they sound small, but knowing the boundaries of a unit, are so important because owners are responsible for their units,
Right.
general maintenance, repair, replacement, and we don't want to have fights. One of the things I hate, and I tell this to boards when we're discussing whether they should amend their documents, that I hate when an owner shows up and says, "Board, here's my declaration, here's my bylaws. You're responsible for A." And the board's response is, "Oh, sorry, we spoke to the attorney, and that's not true. It doesn't matter what the paperwork says.
Ooh.
The statute supersedes it. You're responsible." How does that create community and living in harmony, right?
Right.
It doesn't sound. So a lot of those things are fixed.
Right.
I joked earlier about Airbnb. Obviously, that wasn't around. I'm not seeing it a lot in my practice, only because I don't have a huge presence down in Lower Fairfield County. But in Lower Fairfield County, there's a lot of documents regarding electric bikes.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of it's coming out of New York, but there's been some serious fires with electric bikes.
Interesting.
Something that was never a thought when most of these documents were drafted. Right? We have requirements with satellite dishes. The FCC regulates them. I can't just say no satellite dishes. Now we're starting to regulate solar panels. Right?
Mm-hmm.
We say that in certain communities you can't prohibit solar panels. Certain. That law is going to change this year. There's going to be some more restrictions. So bringing those things in is nice. Also having a clear set of documents that's searchable, right?
Yeah.
Kind of nice. Having a clean table of contents, kind of nice. And then you start to look at the documents, even the old ones. You kind of get a feeling of where things are going to be, and you're going to look and find them. The same thing is true when we're doing them over again. They kind of have the same flow to them, and that helps. I think it helps management. A clear answer means you're not calling me, right? You can read the document, and it'll say, here are the limited common elements, here's who's responsible for them. Instead of, here are the limited common elements, and then 6 paragraphs later, some buried somewhere. The unit owners are responsible for the limited common elements in section 5.1 B, C, and F. Well, wait, what?
And you're cross-referencing.
I flipping pages, turning through, and there's other advantages, insurance, deductibles. I mean, there's lots of things out there, but I like having a clear set of documents that owners can pick up, read, and trust.
Yeah, and that is super valuable. I think we've covered a lot. I'm sure we could go on a lot longer.
The entire law. We're done.
We're done.
We covered it.
Yeah. But, my social media people have said that I really have to make shorter podcasts because they're like, we really don't want to, cut through 3 hours of. So, but I do want to, you are a funny guy. You're a down to earth guy. And I mean, you're very proper on this, in this format. But having conversations outside of here, like there is some humor and entertainment to this line of work. And so do you have a funny or entertaining story or something that's just wild? Like what is one of the craziest things that you can talk about and it's not like confidential or putting anybody specific out there, but you're just like, this is one of the funniest things or craziest stories that I've experienced in,
It's not funny.
Okay.
It's crazy.
Okay.
And it's wildly inappropriate.
Let's do it. Love it.
I hope my clients don't hear this one. So all right, so I get a call from a manager.
Yeah.
We're going back probably 8 years right now. Get a call from a manager. The president of the association's been arrested, and I need you to represent him. And first thing off my bat is I'm not a criminal lawyer. Let's just start there.
Yeah.
I'm not a jack of all trades.
Yeah.
My wife would love it if I hired myself to do a divorce for us. She'd get everything. So I said, okay, what happened? Talk to me. She's like, well, there's a lot of problems with kids at the pool. I'm like, okay, where's this going? Talk to me. So he gets complaints that there are kids at the pool. Uh-huh. So he goes down and sits at the pool. Sits down in a pool chair, and there's some parents over here, people at the pool, and there's children in the pool. Okay? So I'm trying to flush this out. What happened? Well, he was sitting there, and he had his towel, and his towel was on his lap, and his hand's under his towel, and he's watching the kids. I'm like, okay, a little much detail, but okay. What's going on? She said, well, all of a sudden, the parents, they start talking to each other. They're looking. Look at the guy. Look at him over there. It's the board president. Look at him. He's got a towel on his lap at the pool, hand under the towel, watching the children. And we're saying, oh, okay. Like what's going on? Now I'm very
nervous.
engaged. I'm getting very nervous. What's going on? Well, he picks up on it, and he looks, and he's like, oh, no, ladies. No. It's okay. It's just a gun.
What in the world?
The president went down to the pool to be the pool police with a gun. So I immediately said, please send me the minutes authorizing the president to be the pool sheriff.
Right.
Which she said, there's none. I said, where in the documents? Where was he authorized to go bring a gun down to the pool and do this? She's like, nowhere. And I said, I don't think that's covered under the association's directors and officers. I don't think that's something that I should be engaged. I think he's on his own. He might be outside the scope of authority, but try a DNO claim and see what happens. So I did not represent him in that matter, but that is absolutely the wildest thing that I've come across. So we have a number of stories, but that one sticks out beyond anything.
That is pretty wild.
That one's...
You did not disappoint on that. Wow. Do you know what happened?
I don't. I didn't follow up with it. I still represent the community to this day.
Okay.
I did not. I mean, this was 7-8 years ago. I really don't know what happened, but yeah, the police came, essentially brandishing a weapon,
right?
Things like that. I mean, I'm sure, and I don't even know. I'm sure he was licensed to have it and things like that. That's not the issue. It's just dealing with a situation. There's ways to do it, and that wasn't it.
No, and I come across that. I do see stuff like that periodically where. Someone they're usually a good-natured person. They just have bad judgment at certain moments in time. And it's a tough position because you can't no pun intended, shoot first, ask questions later, right? Like you get yourself into situations. I had one where recently took over a community. The new president had got voted in. And they had been having issues with their management company for years and the board and all this stuff. And to an extent, he did good. He got the management company, a bad management company, out, and they felt they'd gotten ripped off. But he was was that the person that was needed for that. And they had a bad landscaping company who was in with the management company, and he ended up firing the landscaper. And the old manager said, hey, you can't do it this way because you're going to breach contract. There's a termination clause that you have to follow. And he says, I don't care. Tell them they're done. And then he hires himself as the new landscaper. He's like, I will do it myself. And he puts all that in the email and says, fire them. I'm hiring myself. I don't care. And so...
What could possibly go wrong?
Right. So I've had this association a grand total of 2 weeks, and I receive a lawsuit for improper termination and breach of contract. I'm like, for $20,000. And they don't have $20,000. They don't have any money. And I'm just like, really, dude? Like, and it's not that he's a bad guy. You can't do stuff like that when you're the president because you expose.
And there's potential conflicts of interest. You're exposing the association. You're right. There's so many things that go on, and that's a claim. I don't know if insurance is going to cover any of that. I probably not, to tell you the truth, but we'll see what happens.
We ended up getting the other party to sell for like $3,000, and it went away.
Should have just hired him back.
Well, we tried, but I talked to the attorney, and she was like, no, because I tried that. I was like, hey, can we just like undo this? Like he's done, right? They're going to vote him out, but like, can we? And she's like, no, because now there's bad faith and this and that. I'm like, okay, well.
You got a good result.
Yeah, it worked out. So tell the viewers, tell everybody how they can find you. Where are you at?
Myself, we're out of Watertown, Connecticut.
Okay.
Pilicy and Ryan is the law firm.
Cool.
My email is cryan@prwpc.com. And feel free to reach out.
Awesome. And the office number
860-274-0018.
and an address.
235 Main Street, Watertown, Connecticut.
Awesome. And, basically you're only licensed for Connecticut, right?
I'm licensed in Mass, but I don't do work in Mass.
Okay. So, so basically if they're in Connecticut, or now how do you feel about people who might see this outside of Connecticut asking, it's very state specific, the law?
It is, but my involvement on a national level with CAI is not as large as Connecticut, obviously, but I'm very involved. I handle the national seminars. I've spoken at them. I go to the National Law Conference. There's a group of lawyers that we know that we deal with and that we refer with. So I've got a listserv of just condo lawyers I deal with, condo insurance people that I deal with. Plus, just over the years, I've been doing this now 14 plus years. I've met people at all these events. We have networks, so we can always get you in touch with the right person, which is a community association lawyer and not just somebody who dabbles. The people that are actually doing this, doing it full time and things like that. For example, you won't see me in divorce court.
Right.
You won't see me in criminal court. You're going to see me doing this. Whether you're jealous of my life or not, this is it all the time.
Nice. Okay. That's perfect. So you can be a resource for whoever.
Happy to redirect whatever I can do. We're here.
Okay. And you're part of CAI. I think that's a underutilized tool that a lot of people don't know about. Yeah. What is CAI?
Community Association Institute. They're based out of Virginia. It's a multinational company now. It's not for profit, but we have different chapters, and Connecticut has its chapter located in Glastonbury. We put events on all over the state. We had one this week. And it's we're really geared towards educating anyone involved in community associations. So whether it's the professionals, such as yourself and myself, whether it's the homeowners, the board members, any other vendors that just deal with associations, such as a roofer, landscaper, whatever the case may be. But we're out there educating. We put on our trade shows. We really try to make sure that there's resources available for everybody. And I mentioned at the beginning, I'm the president of the Connecticut chapter right now. I just started in January as the president, but I've been on that board for a number of years. And I have to say, it's a very good group, and we have professionals. We have an executive director, an assistant, and whatnot. We do have paid employees that run it, but we're really looking out for the interests of communities. And we're one chapter. I mean, most states have a chapter, if not multiple. California has multiple. Florida has multiple. But it's out there. So anyone looking for it, caionline.org is their main website. caionline.org.
Okay.
And then they can get you to any chapter.
And there's education, there's resources, there's
online education. There's a number, especially when COVID first hit.
Yeah.
I did a number of webinars for CAI and put them on there, just telling people how to use Zoom.
Right.
Yeah, back then. Now in Connecticut we have Condo Inc., which is kind of intro to condos, and it's great for new board members.
Okay.
But that's online. You can sign up and watch those videos. You'll have a lawyer, an insurance agent, an accountant. They'll go through a number of issues.
And other vendors that they can potentially utilize.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much. I know your time is valuable, and I really appreciate you coming down.
This was fun. I appreciate the invite. This was great.
Cool. No, thank you. So you guys know where you can find them, and we're here, both of us. Anything you guys need, and me on the management side, all the legal questions go to him because I certainly don't want to deal with that. But thanks. All right.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks. We'll catch you next time. Thanks again. This is Jared with HOA Crusades. We'll talk to you later.